Hi, it's Sam Shemtov from Name. We're a PR company, but we've been toying with management. A manager called Chris Morrison once said that he would never enter the sort of joint venture contract, basically because it was a conflict of interest. I'm not expecting anyone to defend that, but are there any things you'd suggest a budding new manager would look out for if they were thinking of a joint venture arrangement?
But when did he say that? How long ago was that?
It was a year or two ago. So
I just think the times changed.
I think it's
I
worth...
agree.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in this situation where we basically had to release records of our artists, and you look at the structure of the management commission, it doesn't work in that instance. And I would always agree with Chris what he said. You don't want to be in a conflict of interest. So it's pretty tough, but in the end, you have to find some way where you just say, okay, here we go in as partners, and you just rewrite this part of the business. You can still be the manager in other areas, but I think if you go into a joint venture situation, it should be clear what everybody's job is, and I think that can work. It really becomes the personal relationship that could carry such a thing, but I think it is a problem. It's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, of course.
The early days of Island Records, when Chris Blackwell signed Steve Winwood, he signed not only the band that he was in, he signed them as an agent, a publisher, he managed them, he ran the recording studios they recorded at, he owned the cutting rooms that they cut their records at, he owned the whole food chain. In the case of Traffic even, still with Steve Winwood, he even owned the name Traffic. Steve Winwood didn't own it. And there was a classic case of conflict of interest. And of course, managing things in failure, you can own everything 50-50 for a life of copyright and in perpetuity, you know. But managing things in success on a joint venture basis is an entirely different prospect. And the way that we've done it in the one rather bigger deal that we've done, which is whereby we have a shareholding in a vehicle that's been created around the artist, is that we spent a long time building a shareholders agreement. And that was quite an expensive thing for us to do, but we needed to do it because we felt that this is what we would be doing much more in the future. So we were building one that would last us for a long time. And within that, there are good leaver, bad leaver clauses that are in any stockholder agreement, in any corporate organization. And not that I want to be corporate about it, but it does actually, it's there more to protect the artist than anything else, because it's about what to do if the relationship breaks down and how effectively the artist can carry on with their life without being tied up forever. And in fact, in that particular case, which is built for us to be able to use in future cases, it gives the artist the right to be able to walk away with their rights, but the company retains a right of remuneration, but we lose control over how those rights are operated. So that's how we've dealt with it.
Can I buy this? Is this how
No.
much? No.
It's top secret. I'm just leaving it to myself.
Well, come on.
God knows if it works, but we'll see. Anybody else had to
Sounds
deal with
good.
that? Nope.
Yeah.
Any more questions from the floor? We need to... Mark, yeah, sorry, on to you.
Hello. It's not what's your favourite colour, for a start. It's
We know what yours is.
I want to know what the panel think of the 360 model, which obviously, you know, from a record company deal perspective, has kind of evolved into the new, for want of a better word, contractual model. Question one.
Anybody want to kick off? I'm happy to, if nobody else does. I was subject to the vagaries of not a 360, but a kind of 37.5 version of that at Polygram under Alan Levy again in the early 1990s, where he bought a New York-based merchandising company and sent an edict around in what was called our Terms of Reference. Our Terms of Reference at Polygram was a book this thick saying, as a managing director, what I could and what I couldn't do. And it became written in stone that I could not sign an artist without acquiring their full merchandising rights. Touring, there wasn't the web at the time, I just had to acquire the merchandising rights because, hey, we had a merchandising company in New York. So as a good soldier, I acquired the merchandising rights for PJ Harvey, for Pulp, for the Stereo MCs, for Talvin Singh, for any number of them in hard-won deals. The advantage I had at the time was that nobody else was turning over the stones that I was turning over, so there was no real competition to sign the artists. But they were giving up a really major right. Of course, when I went to New York and said, I've got PJ Harvey's merchandising rights on the first album, they went, you what? The fuck are you doing? What are we going to do with that? And so I gave them all back over the years, progressively, successfully, the embarrassment of saying, we can't do anything with these rights, we're giving them all back. And that's my fundamental problem with the so-called 360 model. Unless the other party is bringing something to it, which is more than just money, it's got to be bringing something much more sentient to it. I personally, if I was faced with the opportunity of having to do a deal, if the artist needed the deal and there was nothing else on the table, I might be tempted to do it. But building in every step of the way all the objections, a food trail that leads on the way out when success happens. Because I think that all the 360 models that have been tested so far have been tested in failure, and not really any of them have been tested in success, and that's going to be the interesting moment.
And I think, just to add to what you're saying, Mark, I mean, I think a lot of that is down to not having the expertise. It's a lot to do with a major record label saying, right, well, we want all these rights now. And not being able to back them up with the expertise of the people to do it.
I'll tell you what's been interesting this year is that a family friend, his daughter, has become one of the hot deals of the first part of the year. And I don't manage the girl, but I was asked to review all the different deals that were offered. And it was remarkable. Every single major in the UK offered. And you had Warner's offering decent money, decent royalties, but asking for publishing, merchandising, asking for absolutely a piece of absolutely everything. 10-year touring income they wanted from it, percentage.
Sounds like a manager.
Absolutely. On the other hand, Universal, who really wanted the deal, before the lawyer was appointed, didn't ask for any of those rights and offered them a 20-year reversion before even the lawyer was appointed. So deals are changing even within the majors. If Universal wants something, they can blow anybody out of the fucking water because they can write their own rules. Warner's couldn't move from this model. It's an edict that's come from Edgar Bronfman, as far as I can tell.
I think that's interesting. In the back room, we were talking with Olga, with some of Roger's situations, and you're dealing with they're not exclusive to have all those rights, but they have like a first come, first served basis for the sync rights or for...
Sorry, you're talking
Record
about the
company
record
has
labels?
the sync
Yeah.
rights anyway.
Was it you,
No,
Caroline?
it's me.
Yeah, it was
no, I
Caroline,
just
yeah.
said that
Sorry.
in the new structure at EMI, they've now appointed, they can see record sales and, record companies have to invest a lot of money into an artist, and the return on the records is now the smallest part of the pie. It's the smallest part of the pie. And as artists and managers, you take a percentage of the touring, of the merchandise, and especially now, so EMI have come up with, they've appointed the right people, they've got some great brand people, some great sync people, some great merchandising people, but it's non-exclusive. So if they pitch and they've got the best opportunity, it's there to take, and they take the same commission as an independent company would. So with David, we're looking at all the independent options, but we're also looking at the options inside the record company, because we want them to invest, we want them to support the artist, and if they can take a share of the other aspects of the income, then great. If they've not got the best merchandising proposal, maybe we'll just do syncs. And on a synchronization and a brand deal, it's a case-by-case basis. They do the work, they bring it to us. If we decide that we want to do it, they take their fair commission. And I think that's the healthiest way forward, because you're not trapped into a situation where they are exclusively your partner in that aspect.
It's certainly the most proactive version I've heard, and that's the first I've heard of it. It's good.
I mean, personally, and I'm sorry for butting in here, kind of a 360 deal to me sounds like a cry for help by the record industry more than anything.
They need it, and we need them.
Yeah, you need them, but you don't need your baker to cut your hair. And this is what they're offering at the moment.
Is that what happened to you?
This could happen, basically, if you do a 360 deal. So, I mean, I think the opportunity, and I've I've spoken to the EMI people. They've come to me as well. We have 4 artists on EMI, or well, 3 actually now. And they've asked if they can do branding, sponsorship deals for these artists. And I told them, surely you can do it for all of us. Because we represent all of these artists. If you have an opportunity, come to us. It's non-exclusive. But then you start to asking yourself the question, what are you actually doing? You're supposed to be the record company to sell records, but now you're doing this. And it happened to be the person who runs this department is the person who is head of sync. So you know straight away she's going to have to divide all her energies into all sorts of different aspects. So how good is EMI on syncs when that happens? Personally, I think people should think the other way around. They should basically look at what are we really good at, make it as good as possible, get rid of all the things that we have been doing that are not effective for us. Have too many artists that don't really do anything, have too many people. Everybody has to shrink down to some sort of manageable size. And I'd be surprised if EMI can survive this, because that, although it seems like a good idea in principle, and I think the approach is totally right, I just don't know how can they grab hold of you. They'll come to you with a proposal. If you don't like it, they've spent all their energy on this proposal that doesn't work, and they have to hawk it around other artists that might not work. And so you have this person just doing something that might not be.
I had a great meeting with Daniel Miller on Friday where he talked me through a lot of what's going on with the EMI, but also said that nothing had been delivered yet. So I suppose the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We'll wait and see.
Mark, can I in return ask, because you're here as the label, well, as a label, unfortunately, putting you on the spot. So what is your opinion on this then? What
I
do
mean,
you
the
see as your
obvious
future?
general opinion from most labels like mine is we've invested money, as an independent over the years, and have not seen the benefit of an act become a successful live act. And even though we're spending money on marketing a record, obviously the change in shape of the way the industry is working and the income that we can actually make from physical music, I won't even say the word records, but and how that works is completely different now. Obviously we have to move and adapt, and I want to stay alive. I don't want to and I think for a label like mine, it's always been about working together with people. I know that's not the same with a lot of other record companies. A good example of it is with Grace Jones's new album. I know we talked a little bit about Grace earlier, but we did a 360 with Chris Morrison, with CMO, and they were very smart about that, because they knew if they went to Island Records or Universal, she would, one, be viewed as maybe a heritage artist, but more importantly, they would have to sell millions or hundreds of thousands of albums to make it work. They knew if they gave us a percentage, however what size it is, of the live income, that if we delivered in all the ways that we delivered as a label, which we have, and we created this opportunity, the live side would come through, which it has incredibly, and it's a win-win situation for both people. And they feel really, really good about that, because they know it was an opportunity. I do appreciate what you say, though. It is, to a degree, a case-by-case, act-by-act basis. But on every deal I put on the table now, we talk about that. I mean, I know my label is a little different to, a Universal or a Sony or whatever, but I know that a lot of those labels are kind of trying that on.
You have an ability as a promoter as well, Mark. You know those rules. You know how to promote. You go to Sony, and no offense, I mean, I used to do the dance side at Sony on a European level. There are people in there that don't even know, what's dance, what's a DJ. You have an inbuilt knowledge to do that.
Thank you.
And
It's a bit of an anomaly, really.
that works. You are an exceptional case. That works.
We know that.
Now, we're Ben, what is the big question? I think the first big question is, why the fuck aren't any of us sitting up on this panel rich? I think you now know, because we spend all of it on our artists, effectively. We reinvest. What is the big question, Ben? What are you sensing out of this?
It was actually your job to come up with the question.
Oh,
I've
right,
been outside,
okay. I think, perhaps the big question is, given the skills that we're all bringing to the table, maybe it's not such a big question, but can a friend of the band manage the band anymore? I don't know if that's the case. Can they? Can a friend of the band manage the band? How do you, if you have absolutely none of this knowledge, carry this through? How do you carry this to success? Panel? Anybody, any thoughts?
I don't know. I started managing my first band because I was friends with them. I became their lawyer first, but mainly because
You were a lawyer, though?
yeah, but I was booking Simeon Mobile Disco to come play at a club that I was running, and we became friends. I became their lawyer, and then I became their manager, and we're still friends, and good friends. And I think that's a special management relationship for me. But I'm friends with all the other people I manage as well. It's just a question of how you define friend.
No,
you're a business advisor, I guess.
I'm not talking about that. I'm perfectly friendly with all of my
no, I know,
clients.
but I mean,
I'm talking about, can a little guy that was at university with Coldplay carry it all the way through in this horribly minefield world?
Well,
of
in
360
Coldplay's case,
deals?
I guess he didn't, but he carried it some of the way. I think you learn as you go along. It just depends on the individual situation. I can't see that there's a hard and fast rule for that.
Great.
Anybody else have anything to say? Maybe this isn't the big question. What is the big question? Floor, what is the big question that we're
Well, I
searching
think
for?
Mark's question was pretty good, and I think he's given also some sort of insight of how things can work. And I think it requires the record companies who have been in whatever relation you have as an artist, unless you're U2, you just won't have the same power when you engage with them. And I think once this becomes more of a partnership, I think it's very easy. Artists are willing to, I mean, what Mark says, you're spending all the money to promote something, there needs to be some recompense at the end. If the record sales don't manage to bring that in anymore, it needs to come into a pot. And I personally, we need people like Mark and record companies in the future, unless you do it yourself and bring all these people in. That's the other alternative. So in my opinion, the question is, the 360 deal as such devised by the majors, it seems like a land grab that doesn't really solve the problem. It might solve the problem temporarily for them, but not in the long term. And I think there need to be solutions how releasing records in the future can be something that artists can still do and have a setup that makes sense, and you can still have success with
What's the
selling
question?
music.
Boil it down to the question. then. What's the
question?
So the question to me is effectively the 360 model as suggested by the majors is not the answer. The question is, what is the answer where the artist can release records in the future with a partner, be it the record label, and what sort of deal and construct should that be?
I wonder whether we're being hypocritical up here, because all of us are saying that to a certain degree or another we have 90 degree to 360 degrees with a lot of our artists anyway. But record companies can't have that because, hey, we're the managers. We're allowed it, but record companies aren't. Perhaps that's the question.
It needs to be a yes or no answer.
It does,
How
yeah,
does it?
sorry.